For a record 6 years now, Squarespace has been helping me turn my dream into reality, and that's what Squarespace does for millions of other people too. Their industry-leading website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
What if Arkham game but Lego? I imagine this is the question that TT Games asked themselves when they set out to make Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. Because yeah, what you have likely heard is true. Legacy of the Dark Knight is indeed a Lego Batman game imbued with the gameplay of Rocksteady's phenomenal Arkham trilogy. And broadly speaking, that fusion works pretty damn well. Now to preface, I played through most of this in single player, but also did a fair bit of local 2-player co-op with my kid. I think if you asked him whether you should play this game, you'd get a resounding yes. If you asked me, well, I'd also say yes, just maybe not quite as loudly. See, there is a lot to like here. TT Games have always ensured that their LEGO games aren't just accessible, but deeply playable, and never has that been more true than with Legacy of the Dark Knight. Like I said, this studio has essentially dragged and dropped the core gameplay of the Arkham trilogy. The traversal, the stealth, the combat, the Riddler challenges, all of it is here, and I think offers a more engaging moment-to-moment experience than any other LEGO title, including the excellent Skywalker Saga. There's also the infamous Gotham City itself. The way that TT Games have managed to recapture Rocksteady's rendition of this gloomy setting is just incredible. Its remarkable visual splendor, the density of its activities and collectibles, no matter who you are, whether you and yours are into these LEGO games or not, you're sure to have an absolute blast exploring every brick of this place. Every part of the Arkham formula has been so meticulously translated over here, and as such, it isn't just a great time for adults, but an awesome way for youngsters to get a taste of everything that made the Arkham trilogy so damn good. That's not to say Legacy of the Dark Knight is devoid of its own ideas though. In fact, one of the main reasons I enjoyed this game so much was that, unlike TT Games' prior titles, the narrative here isn't a mere retelling of those you've already seen on the big screen. This game pulls notorious villains, allies, and key moments from across all of Batman media, including the games, the films, the comic books, and very cleverly remixes them into a single cohesive storyline that's always funny and surprising. All that said, there are a few minor things that I think prevent it from being a must-play title if you're not already a LEGO or Batman fan. The story's entertaining, but it lacks a central theme or message that might elevate it. The game looks fantastic, but optimization isn't where it probably should be, and while the stealth and combat sandbox have been appropriately watered down here, you will feel its limitations in some of the game's longer encounters. Are these dumb things to critique in a game for kids? Maybe, but I personally don't classify the LEGO games as strictly kids games. They're family games for all ages. After all, the only people that are really going to appreciate all the memes and surprising cameos are the adults, either playing alone or alongside those kids. Even at that slightly higher level of scrutiny though, I can tell you that this game absolutely rules. If you like LEGO games or Batman, you need not watch this review, you already know what to do. Over the years, TT Games have honed this LEGO formula, just as Rocksteady had done with the Arkham formula all those years ago, and the result of their powers combined is a visually stunning, impressively dense, and relentlessly entertaining celebration of the Batman. As the name of the game implies, LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, Jesus, that's a long name, I'm just going to call it LEGO Batman from now on, retells the storied origins and antics of the one and only Bruce Wayne. Spanning the death of his parents, training with the League of Shadows, his first gigs as a lone vigilante, becoming father of the Bat family, and more. It doesn't follow any one iteration of these events, rather it pulls from all of them. As you might expect, there's a whole lot of the Nolan trilogy, but alongside that, you'll also find a bit of 1997's Batman and Robin, a bit of Matt Reeves' The Batman, Adam West's Batman, hell, even the more obscure characters from the animated series and comics make an appearance here.
I knew I'd be an important villain. I'm gonna relish this, Batman!
I think it would have been easy for all of this to culminate in a nonsensical mess, but the writers here have actually quite deftly remixed and recontextualized all these disparate beats to form a surprisingly coherent story, one that captures the many eras of Batman's life, his iconic allies and villains, and their equally iconic memes and moments.
Why so serious?
TT Games have really stretched their creativity here to ensure that all of this plays nicely together, and indeed that it's all family friendly. I mean, Batman stories are inherently pretty heavy and violent, so this studio have put their signature Lego slapstick spin on things to make them more appropriate for kids, and the ways they'd go about doing this never failed to get a laugh out of me. I mean, like for example, how do you show the origin story of Two-Face without half of Harvey Dent's face getting melted off by fire or acid? Well, like this.
Harvey, you okay?
Oh, key lime. Right in the eye.
That monster.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
What's in the cup?
Water.
It stings.
With some lemon juice, salt, and just a touch of chili.
This sense of humor extends elsewhere too, of course. The game often has you building the most ridiculous and unnecessary contraptions just to do something as trivial as knocking down a door or reaching some slightly elevated ledge. They really are just doing it for the love of the game at this point.
The right chord with this could destroy just about anything.
It's this sort of thing, this wholehearted embrace of its playfulness that makes the LEGO games so endearing and so refreshing to play as an adult, since many of the things that we play are so self-serious. Nothing is ever too silly for TT Games, and as such, playing through this story, I found myself so regularly surprised and always with a big dumb smile on my face. Could the story have done a little more though? I think so. Given LEGO Batman isn't so strictly adhering to pre-existing storylines like prior games from TT Games, I do feel like there was room here to explore some central theme or impart some wisdom, like the best family films do. Take for instance, the LEGO Batman movie. Unironically, a fantastic movie by the way. The framing, the animation, the punchlines, all of it. But its main strength is its emotional core, exploring the importance of letting people into your life when going it alone seems the easier option, even for someone as brave and bold as the Batman. This game sort of gestures toward a similar message, but never explores it deeper than a few lines. Again, did it need to? No, of course not. Sometimes video games can just be video games without some deeper meaning. But as much as I enjoyed this story for its humor and its exciting set pieces, I do think TT Games missed an opportunity to elevate the LEGO formula beyond all of that, to leave kids, and indeed adults, with maybe a little something to think about after they've rolled credits.
You did all right in there, kid. Yeah? Not perfect, but good enough.
Now, where LEGO Batman is a noticeable step up for TT Games is in its gameplay. Don't get me wrong, the Skywalker Saga was a remarkable achievement, not least of which for its sheer breadth. The amount of locations, characters, and collectibles to find was truly mind-blowing. But for me, while the combat was good, it was just a little too simple for my tastes. Obviously, it's meant to be friendly to kids like all LEGO games are, but I actually played that alongside my kid, who was quite young at the time, and honestly, he didn't care much for it either. Similar can be said of the LEGO Horizon game. We played that co-op and it was a bit of fun for a time, but the basic twin stick shooting thing wasn't nearly strong enough to make up for its absence of puzzles. LEGO Batman though, my kid wanted to play this with me like every day he got back from school because of just how fun it is to beat up bad guys in this game. And I was more than happy to oblige because I love the Arkham games, and here I basically got to play one alongside my mini-me. The combat here is almost one-to-one with Rocksteady's trilogy. It's close quarters brawling with a basic one-button combo, a dodge, a counter button, and instant takedowns after building up your meter, just here with a little extra Lego flair.
No one's a match for my cat-like reflexes.
Each of the 7 playable characters also has 2 gadgets they can throw out for crowd controls or stuns, and each of those can be built upon slightly in a small but effective skill tree. The fact that TT Games have so wonderfully replicated Arkham's combat here, arguably one of the most cathartic and influential combat systems in video game history, really does a lot for this game's playability. They didn't do it without a little help, mind you, as Rocksteady are credited as co-developers on the project, with over 24 members from the studio helping out with this thing, and by God, can you feel it. The way you can dart between enemies, mixing in a few batarang throws or a grapple, then unload a barrage of fists into a stunned goon's chest, squeezing out as many punches as you can before at the very last second countering the guy behind you, throwing him at another dude, and then finishing off another with a takedown. It all feels great and puts you in that deeply satisfying combat rhythm, a rhythm that's regularly broken up by the variety of special enemy types that'll force you to dodge projectiles, explosives, and stuns, jump over shockwaves, or aim a charging brute at a wall to stun them. The end result of all of this is, I think, hands down the most engaging LEGO game you can play, no matter your age or experience with video games. Do note there are difficulty modes as well. I'd recommend most people play on the highest difficulty like I did, since that one throws more of those special enemies at you and gives you limited lives, whereas the other difficulty modes give you infinite. Even then, I only wiped like one time, so it's not too spicy. Still, I think precisely tuned for this game's demographic. What I will flag though is that the combat is, of course, slightly less robust than it is in the Arkham games. And in the absence of more gadgets, multi-takedowns, ground pounds, and that faster pace, combined with the fact that it's rather limited roster, all play basically identically, combat does start to feel repetitive at times, particularly when the game throws dozens and dozens of enemies at you. Overall, it's definitely fun and dynamic enough to sustain a meandering 15-hour playthrough, but beyond that, you may feel its limitations more keenly. There's also the stealth, which I think falls short a little bit. Note that there's no areas in the game where using stealth is compulsory, or that you'll have to restart the mission if you get detected. It's an entirely optional thing that you can engage with, should you choose, before you start unloading on enemies. Like the combat, it's very similar to the Arkham games. You'll grapple between perches and carefully select who to snatch up before going for those riskier takedowns at ground level. Problem is the game just doesn't facilitate stealth super well. The level design often lacks enough obstacles to block sightlines, so trying to sneak around or use batarangs to skillfully distract or lure enemies rarely feels worth doing. Detection also feels slightly inconsistent. Sometimes you'll stroll right by a dude and go unnoticed, while other times they've apparently got super hearing. So it's a touch lacking if you want to stick to the shadows, but on the other hand, I suspect TT Games really just wanted a way for kids to dip their toe into stealth-based gameplay, and on that basis, it works. There are enough tools here for kids to get at least a little creative before they start throwing hands. Now, Legacy of the Dark Knight may not have as vast a character roster or environments as the Skywalker Saga, but that's allowed TT Games to pour a stupid amount of detail into what is here. This is a good looking LEGO game, man. I mean, look at this. Notice the light scuffs and scratches on Batman's plastic cowl, the subtle imperfections of the printed on details, the tiny stray threads all over his fabric cape, and the way that the rain drips down all of this with staggering realism. It's a totally unnecessary, almost indulgent level of detail, the kind that only the biggest of us nerds would pay attention to, and that kids certainly wouldn't notice at all, but it does speak to the amount of care that TT Games artists have put into this thing. And that's to say nothing of Gotham itself, which has been so stunningly realized here in LEGO form. It's obvious TT Games challenged themselves to essentially recreate Rocksteady's interpretation of the thug-ridden city, which is no easy feat given what a technical and artistic marvel that was and still is. Yet even still, TT Games have risen to the challenge. They've really nailed that bleak, noir-esque atmosphere, broken only by pops of vibrant color spilling from neon signage. In some ways, they've even done what Rocksteady could not. This is Gotham City, after all, not Arkham City, and as such, the streets here aren't just home to criminals, but also filled with pedestrians and car traffic, adding an extra sense of liveliness to the open world. But how does it run, you ask? You might have caught wind of all the panic going on before the game's release about its crazy high system requirements. The good news is that it turns out those were very much overestimates. Hardware Unboxed did a great video on the subject that I recommend checking out, but TLDR, you're not going to need a top-of-the-line rig to run this thing. Still, performance could be better. I can't speak for consoles, but on my PC with an RTX 4090 at max settings, 1440p, no upscaling enabled, I was barely able to hold 60 FPS. That said, max settings on Unreal Engine games tends to be more of a flex setting for those on like monster rigs, and so setting DLSS to balanced or just dropping down to high settings boosted me up to 80 plus FPS. Keep in mind that playing split screen co-op does of course chug down FPS a little further. I noticed a roughly 20% decrease in frames, so if I was getting 60 FPS before, I was now getting 40 FPS in co-op. Not unexpected, but kind of a bummer. So performance is okay, but not quite where it needs to be, I think, especially for a LEGO game, and that does explain why the Switch 2 port was delayed. Hopefully TT Games have had enough time to polish it up, and indeed make further optimizations to the PC version for those on lower end hardware.
Quickly, Batman! After them!
How'd you get away twice?
Back to the positives though, Gotham City isn't just easy on the eyes, it's also an absolute joy to explore. Again, much like the Arkham games, you'll cruise around in a vehicle to get around quickly, but at some point you'll want to take things in from higher up, at which point you'll use your grapple to zip around or slingshot into a glide. And it's here from up above where you'll really be able to appreciate the scope and density of Gotham City. The open world comprises of 4 islands with seamless travel between them, each of these islands packed with skyscrapers and apartments, some of them are enterable, and you'll also find underground tunnels and car parks, and then littered in and around these spaces are a metric ton of things to do and collect. I'm talking 61 Riddler puzzles, just as many Clue Master puzzles, over a dozen Falcone vaults to break into, as well as numerous combat and race challenges, hidden caches, and spontaneous crimes popping up in the downtime. Seriously, you cannot take 2 steps in Gotham without being drawn to some new activity, and you always feel compelled to do them because they're never too frustrating to complete, and also just because of how TT Games have for a long time made collectibles and studs so deeply satisfying to collect. Seriously, I don't know what it is, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's the sound design, but vacuuming up these suckers always makes my brain make the happy juice. Of course, the main purpose for all this stuff is to feed your hunger for cosmetics. Each of the game's 7 playable characters has a modest garage of vehicles to unlock, with movie-accurate sounds and even slightly different handling profiles for some of them. There's a sizable closet of skins to collect, over 120 of them all up in fact, each with their own custom glider skins to match, and there's also a whole bunch of furniture items you can purchase to fit out the Batcave. There's definitely less to collect here than the Skywalker Saga, for example, but it's worth noting that that game was developed under debilitating, unsustainable crunch, whereas I suspect this game's more modest scope allowed the workers to, live normal lives, and what they've delivered here is nonetheless impressive. Even though the campaign only runs you about 15 hours, there's more than enough here to at least double that playtime and get your money's worth.
Ready to put your mind to the test again?
And that is a factor to consider here. LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight is a full premium priced game at $70 US. I don't like to bring up pricing too much in reviews because people value their money differently. That's not nothing, and so you're probably wondering if it's worth shelling out for this over the many other excellent games that share that price point. So here's what I'll say. I'm a grown-ass man, I played the majority of this game completely solo, and I still had a great time for all the reasons I've mentioned throughout this review. But like I said in the intro, unless you're a big LEGO or Batman fan, I also don't think you're missing out on too much if you decide to skip this one, especially if you've already played the Arkham trilogy, since the gameplay and story here aren't doing anything super noteworthy. Which, by the way, if you haven't, what are you doing watching a LEGO Batman review? Go play that immediately, and then maybe loop back to this when the time and price is right for you. On the other hand, if you're after a new game for your kids to play, or a game to play alongside them, or maybe with a significant other who isn't too experienced with video games, you should absolutely pick this up. Don't even think twice about it. Yeah, I think it could have done a little better in some areas, but at the end of the day, those people you're playing with probably aren't going to care about many of the nitpicks I've laid out here. And honestly, neither will you if you're playing this along with them, because you'll be way too preoccupied with everything else this game is throwing at you. It's a game that honors the Batman mythos in all its forms, with a rich and visually spectacular Gotham City to explore. It's Rocksteady's winning Batman formula fused with TT Games' signature LEGO charm, and just a fun, local co-op romp in a time where we still get precious few of those. Like honestly, as far as a LEGO Batman game goes, you really couldn't ask for much more than this. And for that reason, I strongly recommend LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight.
Do you run your own business, or do you want to? If so, a website is really helpful, and there's no better or easier way to build a website than Squarespace. Let's say, for example, you have a store that sells stuff, I don't know, clothes, shoes, furniture, cell phones, whatever. That store exists in just one spot, and you're probably only able to service your local area. But what if you could tap into a much bigger market? What if you had a website that lets customers find you no matter where they are? What if they could see your inventory online and make purchases? And what if you had a website that could facilitate all of that seamlessly? Well, that's exactly what Squarespace does. Squarespace lets you build professional-looking websites in minutes. You just select from their extensive list of pre-built templates, customize those templates to your heart's desire, and boom, an incredible-looking website that looks like it costs thousands of dollars to build, when in reality, you did it all yourself. That's just the front end, whereas business owners are going to be equally interested in the back end. Squarespace provides intuitive tools for inventory management, customized shipping options and label printing, simple payment solutions through platforms like PayPal and Stripe, and detailed analytics so you can track how well business is going. There's even award-winning customer support on hand to assist you should you ever get stuck or just need some advice. It's an easy-to-use end-to-end solution that could change your life, to be honest. A website is one of the best ways to get yourself or your business out there. So if you're thinking about kicking off something new, either personally or professionally, a website is certainly going to be a great step in that process. If you want to get started, then visit squarespace.com to start building your website through their free trial. And if you want to get serious, then use offer code SKILLUP at checkout for a 10% discount off your purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks very much to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.